Christian is. I think he's on his way, so he should be here any minute. But we're gonna kick this off with Adam. He'll be here in a few seconds if he isn't. Oh, here he is. Look at that. Perfect timing. Look at that. Boom. Right on time. Perfect. What's
sorry, my daughter.
unacceptable? Hey, you're just real. Oh, okay. Your lighting. Well, I was like just gonna say, like, I can't see you at all, and then your lighting just showed up. Perfect. Sweet. So, welcome back to Common Mansplaining. We got a fun one tonight. Tonight is all about conspiracy theories and primarily Epstein, because everybody in the world is talking about Epstein. And honestly, unacceptable. Hey, I gotta make sure this is off. Sorry about that. I had a little audio malfunction. Gotta be honest. I wanted to avoid talking about Epstein. I did. Kind of wanted to dodge this thing altogether. I truly thought that this wasn't going to be a big deal, but then kind of the way it's been managed over time and the way that people respond to that management and stuff like that has turned it into a much bigger deal. And so now I'm not sure that it is avoidable any longer. So we are going to talk about it. As you guys come in, say hi. I only see, hey, Tanya, how you doing? Welcome aboard. I only see one for some reason. Hey, Christian, how many people are you seeing in your chat thing? I only see one. Okay, there we go.
I see five.
I got five now. Perfect. All right. So say hi as you come on in. We're gonna get rocking and rolling. So yeah, Epstein. For those of you who are catching up a little bit, I just want to give a very brief overview of Epstein, who Epstein is, and why this is important in the first place. And I'm going to keep it kind of PG because I don't like talking about this kind of thing. But Epstein is a sex trafficker, right? He was a guy who called himself a financier. He supposedly helped people with their finances. But in reality, I mean, he didn't have a college degree. He didn't really have much success at finance. He wasn't a very smart person. Anybody who ever talked to him would say he was a fraud. So he really wasn't a financier. What he was that was his front, while he brought high-end clients into his private island and was a purveyor of all things basically profane. Everything that you could think of that's vulgar or bad or abusive, he was basically into it. And I don't really like talking about it, but he's gotten to be such a public figure in the news right now that I can't really avoid it. So, then
yeah, I would say he was a wielder of soft power.
Yes.
Holding parties. If you've seen Schindler's List, right? Talks about Oscar Schindler wasn't a manufacturing genius or an engineer, right? But he knew how to throw parties and sort of glad hand and get to know the right people and bring them to and make them think that he was a big shot. And it was so Jeffrey Epstein. We should use his first name to distinguish him against other Epsteins that are with others. But Jeffrey Epstein, right, had a long career of throwing parties, influence, being part of New York society, high-end society, being perceived as very wealthy and powerful, and his friends, and leveraging that, right?
Yeah.
Leveraging his perception, his connections and proximity to power, and then ultimately to feed his personal lusts and moral lusts. Those that he resulted in criminal convictions that he pled guilty to.
Right.
That of
twice.
Of inappropriate, not inappropriate, but criminal acts with underage girls.
Yep.
Right? And he was forced to register. But that did not compel him to stop. That compelled him to make things more secret.
Right.
And have an island, different things like that. So obviously, when there's something, right, when somebody goes secret like that, right, because he got busted and he's like, well, I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. I just need to not get caught. Right. Now there's all these layers that have to be unpeeled, of the truth, right? The truth that wants to come out. There seem to be a lot of barriers to that coming out, and now it's become a political football.
Right. And so one thing I want to discuss before we go into this about conspiracy theories, because the words conspiracy theory have kind of like this negative connotation right out there. And especially among the left right now will look down upon anybody who even has a theory that diverges from the primary narrative, right? Anytime, hey, Vicky, welcome aboard. Anytime somebody basically, there's almost every time there's a big story like this, there's always going to be a primary narrative, the narrative that the media feeds you. And then there's going to be alternative theories, right? Now, in reality, the way people use the words conspiracy theory is almost like a slur nowadays. They're like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Which it's kind of like saying that you believe in crazy stuff, right? But in reality, the words conspiracy theory only mean that you're theorizing that there is a group of people who have a secret agreement, which, by the way, happens thousands of times a day in every state, in every city on earth, right? Like everybody who ever commits a crime with more than one person has a secret agreement. That's just how it goes, right? So I just want to just start with the like getting that out of the way. Like let's take the weight out of that word and understand that when we talk about this, that it's these words are just what they're meant to mean, which is just about secret agreements between people.
Well, yeah. So I'd first like to figure. I agree with you 100%. But this when we talk to Epstein, we're not talking about conspiracy theories only. We're talking about conspiracy facts. Him and Ghislaine Maxwell, in fact, conspired, right? Planned this out. This was very well organized to have this sort of endless train of sort of new models, very young people who didn't know any better, who could be very easily glamorized by private jets, celebrities, islands, parties, alcohol type of things like that. Bring them into this glamorous world, exploit them, move them along. I mean, this was a conspiracy. So those are facts. She is in jail for that.
Absolutely.
What the theories are, right? So again, let's separate. We're not making that up. That is all established conspiracy fact. Is what we're not being told, and what we're not being told has some giant logical steps that people with common sense. That's what our channel is all about. If you're here for the first time, we want to understand these things with the filter of common sense and say, whoa. And so what we're being told about it, especially about after his arrest and his demise, doesn't pass the common sense test. We're like, okay, you're lying to us. And we know that so much of this was hidden and concealed and involved powerful people that would have a lot of interest in keeping those things concealed.
Absolutely.
Right. It leads us to common people be like, okay, well, if there's so much reason why these should remain concealed, let's theorize. Let's take the initial logical step about what they would be, what would have transpired, why the interest and the power of that. So we're just connecting the dots.
Absolutely.
So conspiracy theories, right? We're not sitting around basing this on nothing. It wasn't like we're taking facts. We're taking what we're being told about the facts, and we're trying to see through the spin and saying, you don't expect an intelligent person to believe that. Right. And if you expect this to, you're going to need to provide more evidence. Absolutely. Otherwise, this is going to be the prevailing narrative.
Right. And that's the thing, right? So the narrative that we're fed, and this is where the conspiracy theory comes in, is that Epstein killed himself. Right. And just so that we could put some of these facts together so that you understand why I feel that's not accurate. I want you guys to follow my logic as we go through this. All right. So here's a couple of facts for you. Number one, Epstein hadn't been convicted the second time yet. He was in jail awaiting a trial. Right. So it's not like he got in jail and then they gave him a life sentence and he's like, oh no, I'm here for the rest of my life. What will I do? Let me end it all. Right. No, he was like talking to his lawyers literally the week before saying, oh man, I feel great. I'm about to get out. And he literally said those words, I'm about to be out in a week. Now, one thing to consider there is like, why would he even say that? Is he thinking about rolling on some people to produce some leverage to get himself in a better situation with the law and say like maybe get an early release? Or is he, is he just upbeat about his chances because he was secretive enough, What
it's simpler than that. He just knows that everybody in New York's soft on crime. And so it's like, what are they gonna do? Like, he's not scared of any New York prosecutor coming after him because he's woke and on the left. Right. And we don't know. All right, Eddie and I are not attorneys. So there's a different standard between what can be talked about on this channel what can be printed in newspapers, what can be admitted in court, and what juries can use in court to determine guilt, right?
Yeah.
So a lawyer could talk about those different thresholds, but he had some very good lawyers that were indicating to him that he had a strong case, and based on the prosecutors and the things that he was going up against, to breathe fresh air. Right. So yeah. So what you're saying, he was in the thing. We might not understand it altogether because we're not lawyers.
Right.
But he was. This was not a fatalistic. My life is over. There is no hope.
Right. Yeah. And it wasn't just one person that said that. Like multiple lawyers, his brother, like everybody else seems to think, like this guy is not the kind of guy who is looking suicidal and depressed. He's a guy that was looking upbeat and ready to rock and roll. And then we go on to the next layer, which is he was supposed to be supposedly on a suicide watch, and he was supposed to always have a cellmate with him at all times. Now, he had a cellmate, and this cellmate was mysteriously transferred out that night. Like, that's horrifically coincidental. Now, sure, he could just be like waiting for his chance, and then they transferred the guy, and then he's like, now's my chance. But like, that's just an outrageous coincidence. And if you couple that with the fact that the cameras that were supposed to cover his cell block weren't working, and if you couple that with, the fact that his brother, who didn't believe that he had committed suicide, hired another pathologist, and the other pathologist looked at the autopsy and said, no, these injuries are more consistent with homicide strangulation, like with somebody choking him out, right? And like on and on and on. There's just so many coincidences. And
the guard fell asleep. The guard who
the guard fell asleep.
Works graves all the time. Yeah.
And the best one is, so just recently, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in a moment, but just recently they released a video that was supposed to clear this all up for us. It was supposed to show us that, now we know that nobody had access to Epstein, and everything has to be above board. And so they give us this video, and it's one, not the right angle. It's in the wrong part of the room. 2, it doesn't show his cell block at all. 3, it's been edited. 4, it's missing time. Like, I'm just flabbergasted why they would even think that anybody. I mean, they're just trying to piss me off at this. I'm like, where is this even going? I'm trying, and I can only think of 2 possibilities. Number 1, there's a cover up and somebody screwed up. Or number 2, they like shopped this out to somebody and said, hey, give us a video that'll clear all this up for us so that we can go on with our lives. And then the person did a horrible job, but golly.
Well, all right. I'll spitball thing. I don't know about the New York Department of Corrections. I know in California, they're very well unionized. You can make $400,000 a year working in the prison system in California, right?
Good
and
job.
not being like a warden, right? Being like a guard. And so they have a thing. They protect themselves a lot like police officers protect themselves. That there would be, certainly if there was gross negligence done by security guards there's a lot of pressure and a culture to try to conceal it so that your buddy doesn't lose his gravy train of benefits and things like that. They can keep it going. So there's a lot of sort of, you watch my back, there's sort of this culture, at least in California, to look over gross negligence or bad actions, to keep this going. And so that's when you show us edited video and you say the guards fell asleep, they clearly, this person was under their care and their responsibility, and they failed.
Right.
But nobody's holding them responsible.
Right.
Then it feels like they've got to have a network. This is a conspiracy. I mean, maybe not a criminal conspiracy, but a conspiracy of the Department of Corrections people there in New York to cover their butts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, right.
So they're like, the best case scenario is they're lying out of their teeth to just so they don't lose their job and their gravy train.
Yeah. How's this guy not fired? How's he not like Yeah, at least, right? Like, how is this? I don't. But anyway, so
Yeah,
one thing
yeah.
that,
So yeah. Well, I mean, fired, but yeah. The we should know. Yeah,
right,
disciplinary stuff and that, but like sort of union things. It's like, hey, we're not HR people. We don't know the labor laws in New York. For
right,
some reason, he was able to cover without, if somebody went out and edited that tape really good and threw it in the East River really quick, then all of a
yeah,
sudden they can't bust their buddy,
right,
and it
right,
could
right,
be like
right.
that.
And so, right, yeah. So to answer Tanya's question, Tanya asks, is this going to remain covered up? I have to say probably, and this is just using my instincts, right? I think it will. Now, what I think will happen is there will be some file dump. There's going to be some kind of release in the next couple of weeks, because I think Trump has realized that there's just such a backlash with this thing that he's just going to start like dumping some files. But unfortunately, the parts that are going to be the juicy parts that we would want, the people who are really responsible for this criminal conspiracy, they will already have sanitized their work. Unfortunately, like that is probably almost certainly gone. Just like with JFK files and MLK files, like the people that have this stuff released 70 years later, and everybody's like waiting with bated breath. They're like, ooh, the MLK files are finally coming out. I can finally figure out who's gonna, who killed JFK. I'm like, no, you won't. Not in a million years will they. Like, they're not going to release that stuff if they kept it secret for 70 years. They're not just going to all of a sudden, like, just feel magnanimous enough to just, here you guys go. Now you can say we're guilty. No, that's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. But one thing I wanted to discuss when we go into conspiracy theories is a concept called Hanland's razor, right? And so for those of you who have not heard this before, Hanland's razor is basically that you should never attribute to malice that which you can attribute to incompetence, right? So basically, if there's a situation where you're not sure if somebody's trying to screw up, like on purpose to be evil, or if they just accidentally screwed up, usually you would err on the side of caution and assume that they've accidentally screwed up. But
Yeah,
in this
it's
case,
like Emperor's New Groove. That's giving you too much credit.
right?
Were these guards, prison guards, really like organizing some super elaborate conspiracy to, Count of Monte Cristo, Jeffrey Epstein out of the country and bringing a body double that was strangulated?
Yeah, right. So, and normally I would side on the side of caution. I would err on the side of caution. I would say, maybe this guard just did fall asleep, right? But the problem is after each coincidence, it compounds the problem, right? Like guard falling asleep, maybe, right? Guards fall asleep. Camera's broken. Okay, now we're talking about two different things at the same time. Cellmate transferred out at the last second. Now I'm like, okay, that's really suggestive, right? Like, and you go on and on and on. The autopsy showing like signs of like homicide, strangulation. Everybody's saying he probably was, Epstein is even on record having said, "My life is in danger," right? And I mean, after the fourth or fifth coincidence, this is a thing I used to tell people, like, right, back in the day, we used to have these VHS cassette tapes, right? I don't know if most of you are old enough to know what these are, but like you play this like videotape in the thing, right? And so if a videotape didn't work, right, first thing you do is you take it out and you look at the tape, right? So like maybe the tape is broken. But after you try like 7 videotapes and they all don't work, it's time to think that maybe your video cassette player is broken, right? And that's how I feel about this. Like one coincidence, okay, maybe it's that coincidence. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all of a sudden I'm like, all right, there's no more coincidence. Now it's the cassette player. Now this is a conspiracy. So that's where I'm going with this. Let's turn to
Look. I will say, I don't even think it's a theory anymore. I think it's conspiracy fact now that there's a conspiracy to hide the truth of whatever because it makes so many people look bad. So there was the conspiracy. Well, let's separate Epstein's conspiracy to sexually abuse women, young women or underage women, and now the people who either through gross incompetence are now conspiring to conceal their truth and to sell the American people a bill of goods that we're not buying. right? That clearly, we're intelligent people realize, look, this is not acceptable, right?
Right.
For what you're telling us, and if even at this point, if Trump came out and said, all right, Jeffrey Epstein was a homicide, he was killed, but we have no evidence, no leads who did it because the evidence on the tape.
Right.
He doesn't want to do that because he was president at the time. His Department of Justice, even though this was New York custody, not federal custody, it still reflects on him as the ultimate sort of guarantor of Epstein's life. He was right when we give him into the government's care. They're responsible. The government's responsible. The buck stops there.
Yep.
So there's some of that CYA, and so he's self-interested to not want to lay Jeff Epstein's homicide at his door. Right. He wants to lay that off either as he killed himself or somebody else's fault or somebody else's incompetence. And people are starting to feel that the self-interest component is so much. It's calling into question his statements, and we're having a hard time buying them.
Right. Yeah. So with that in mind, let's look at Trump's management of this situation a bit, right? Because I just for those of you guys who watch this channel know I'm pretty fair when it comes to both sides of the aisle, right? I like to be objective when it comes to these things. I've never really been a Trump fan, but I think he was far better choice than Kamala Harris. But with regard to his management of this situation, I think it was very poor. I think he had poor instincts. I think he really upset his base. And the way he did it was by basically just kind of hand waving everybody's concerns, right? Now, agreeably, on the right, we kind of have a greater concern about this type of crime, right? This is any kind of sexual indiscretion is usually more of like a right-leaning thing, right? We usually
want somebody to be held criminally liable. We want this stuff to stop.
Right. The right is usually a little bit harder on crime in general. And then, of course, any kind of sexual morality, we're a little bit heavier on a lot of times because of our religious beliefs and stuff like that. And so it's a big deal to us, right? Even if it wasn't that big of a deal normally, right? This guy has got it. You add the fact that he's a lot of sexual indiscretions, a lot of really like nasty stuff, and the top like 1% of the world, right, is like all involved in this. And so it becomes an issue of indiscretion, impropriety and power, right? And you add all those things together, and we don't want anybody to get away with that. I don't want to live my life thinking that the top 1% is just like blissfully able to just do all this nasty stuff and just never face any consequences. And so then Trump, gets this and he's like, why are we still talking about it? And I'm like, because it's a big deal, dude, right? That's why we're still talking about it. And I think if Trump had come out day one and said either like, we're just not ready to release anything yet, we're still looking at it, or, we've got some stuff, we've reviewed it all, and there's just no way to make any criminal prosecution. All we've got is like, people in masks covering themselves. We can't get any clear pictures. It's just like videos that don't show anything but like bad porn or something like that. Then I think that he would have been able to like sweep all this aside. But instead, him saying that like it's not a big deal makes it look very much like a cover-up. So now here's the other side of the coin. Now the other side is the pendulum can swing too far, right? And so the left-leaning media basically says that, oh, Trump's saying this because he's on the list. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Because I have my own.
So there's lists and then there's lists. Was he associate? Was he a long time? Yes. We know we have pictures of them together. We have statements that he made about them. Were they friendly? They were more than acquaintances. They were longtime friends. Now, are they lists of people that participated in this criminal conspiracy to abuse underage girls? That's the list, right? So they're lists and they're lists. Right. And it would be irresponsible for us to say that anyone's on that list if we hadn't done hard journalistic work, or if we weren't privy to the information, the files that the FBI has, or if we're not interviewing the victims. We know victim who claims that Prince Andrew abused her with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein on the island. That woman is dead as well, right?
Yeah.
She passed away of suicide.
Yes.
This year. So we do have a few confirmed cases from the victims who have named names, but just association or you're running in this New York, like, hey, I was in New York at the same time Epstein was. That's not necessarily, that would put you on a list of maybe possible associates, but not possible sex offenders.
Right.
And so we want to know, right? The right wants to know who was abusing these girls and not let them get away with it. The left just wants to use this to lower Trump's approval ratings and derail his agenda. And here's the thing that made me suspicious about this, because if Trump had 2 consecutive terms, I feel like people could lay this out. Hey, we need to know what's going on with the Epstein files. Either release the files for journalists to do work on them and the public to review them, or start arresting people. One or the other, right?
Right.
But Trump lost, and for 4 years, all of the intelligence, all of the responsibility, all the weight landed in Democrat hands.
Democrat
right?
DOJ.
And the New York, all the attorneys, federal attorneys in New York had strong interest in trying to charge Donald Trump, disqualify him from running, right? They were bringing every criminal case that they could. They looked over all these files, couldn't find anything criminal, right? And kind of tacitly exonerated him that. Say, he was just a friend of a guy doing bad stuff, but he wasn't participating in that. As essentially like, because we would have loved to have hit him for that, but it just wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, there's obviously more to these Epstein files than what we're being told.
Sure.
But there could be less than what we want them to be, or less than what the media would like them to be. And so they've kind of built up their own mystique.
Yeah.
But because of but again, Trump has given us inconsistent messaging on this, and now he doesn't have credibility on the issue. Right. Who do you think, Eddie, would have credibility like that for you? Like this, would it take John Roberts, somebody somebody? Well, what type of thing would you take for somebody who said the Epstein files, what the government has, is not something that a grand jury can indict, and thus would be irresponsible for us to release and just slander people with with this information? If somebody said that, who has credibility for you that you would accept that from, or would you always doubt if anybody said that?
No, Dan Bongino.
Okay.
If Dan Bongino said that tomorrow, I'd believe it. I'd believe it in a heartbeat, because number one, he's built up credibility over time. He's never steered us wrong. And one of the problems with this whole case is the fact that he was ready to walk, right? Is the fact that he thought that this thing was being mismanaged and he was ready to just take off, right? And so that shows me, unfortunately, a reason not to take Trump's word for it, right? And so, yeah, I agree with you 100% that there's lists and there's lists, right? Like, a lot of people think that this list is like some magical, like Epstein, for some reason, like, went down in a journal and said, today, the following criminals slept with underage chicks under my care.
They signed in. As soon as you got done having a session with somebody underage, you signed a guest book.
Yeah, please, just like a wedding, reception. Please sign this guest book for our orgy today.
And sign, please.
That's never going to happen, right? That's not what they have. But what they did claim that they had is the following. Pam Bondi said that she had a list of clients from Epstein. Now, I don't know if she meant it like that or not, but if she didn't mean it like that, after saying explicitly those words, what she should have done was immediately hold a press conference and say, that's not what I meant. I misspoke, right? Like, it should have been like minutes later, right? The moment this whole thing came out and came to a head, she should have been like, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was I had those files on my desk. I didn't know if there was a list on it or not. And then I checked it and it wasn't a list. That's what she should have came out with almost immediately, right? Trump should have never denied this thing. He should have immediately said, look, we've got information. It's just not credible enough. And it might damage people's lives. It's not going to work in the court, the actual court, but it might work in the court of public opinion and just hurt people, right? For no reason. Right. And so one of those, if they'd have managed it well from day one, I would have been happy. But they didn't manage it well. So now it's like
there's another unfortunate thing. I talked about this with my wife a little bit that might upset some people if we talk about it now, just trigger warning. So we want to believe the victims, right? We do believe the victims. We believe that they were abused, that Jeffrey Epstein abused these women on his island, right? So we believe these women, right? The standard, though, for something to hold up in court, for the government to spend resources to bring a trial,
right?
Unfortunately, right, when they do that, say one of these victims names the name, say John Doe or something,
right? Sure.
Choose this, and they bring charges against this John Doe. That victim's credibility is fair game in court. And unfortunately, Jeffrey Epstein picked vulnerable women that, would be, could have had some connection, obviously, with paying for certain sexual favors type of thing, bring it up that they would have credibility issues in a court of law. They don't have credibility issues with us. We believe them. We're not trying to say we don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein did not. At no point have we said this. But the government is not us. The government has to see what can be proved in a court of law. What is actionable intelligence? And supposedly what Trump has said, they took all this evidence to a grand jury. And the grand jury will indict a yellow dog if a prosecutor tells them to. And they said that this was not enough to bring criminal indictments, even against names that were given by the victims, right? That aren't public, but sealed in this grand jury. And so that's frustrating. That's frustrating for us as a public, and frustrating, and maybe we want to have rogue vigilante justice or let these people's lives be ruined in the court of public opinion. But that's not the government's job to do that, right?
I don't know about that.
Okay, all right. So well, tell me, lay that out to me.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because here's the problem right now. Right now, what I feel like one of our nation's issues is that we overclassify things. We are over secretive, right? And we have to remember that this is essentially a government of the people, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I realize that there are times where things need to be classified, where they need to remain hidden. And those times are like issues of national security. That's like active operations in like the Middle East, or like secret, like clandestine ops in China or something like that, like where we don't need their names out in the public or something, or even maybe like the names and like stuff of ICE officers that are going into danger, in a time where they might be doxxed and hurt and their families might be targeted. Those are reasons why I would accept classification. I don't accept classification just because the government's like, this might, damage some people's lives. Tough crap. We need to know information to know who we can trust in the future. And if, don't get me wrong, like I'm still going to treat people innocent until proven guilty. And I do accept the fact that some might not, right? I do understand that some people are going to say, we don't know that they're guilty, but we can guess that they are. And that bothers me a little bit on the inside. But by the same token, this is information that you're right that it's not really the government's job to like go out and put people's names on blast, but it's also not their job to hide it. So I'm kind of like on both sides of the coin.
It's true. And I think, maybe releasing the names or the files to some journalists or something that they can see it, right? Sealing them is probably a bridge too far, heavily redacting them. But it's one thing, right? Say you live next door to Jeffrey Epstein, right? And he sent you Christmas cards, because you're his next door neighbor or whatever. Right. And so now you're in his contact address book, and they just put your name there, and it's like, whoa, my saying that I'm an associate or that I'm in his contact list, right, does not, right,
Yeah,
right
I
now
mean,
because it's so heavily weighted. It's like either file charges against me, right, or be
right.
responsible, right? Like
I mean,
I just think because the claims are so inflammatory, any type of wink, wink, well, right when the government says, well, like we feel like this guy was a criminal, we just don't have enough to convict him.
right.
Like
No,
can we,
that's
the
fair.
government can't do that. Like they
Right.
couldn't do that at Al Capone and be like, this guy's a criminal, but we don't have enough to convict him. They said, all right, we can't convict him for this, but we can convict him for tax evasion or whatever,
Well,
right? They go around it.
so that's a great point, and I want to go there in a moment because
Sure.
here's the other side to this coin. Right now, they said they had videos. Right, they said they had videos
Yeah.
of the act. Now, I don't know exactly what those videos show. I haven't looked at any of them. I don't, they're not showing them to anybody, right?
Yeah.
But maybe these videos show something condemning that they can act on. Maybe it doesn't. But here's what I do think that they have. I feel like they've got financial records, right? Because again, Epstein was a financier, right? And he wasn't a good one, right? So we know this. So now if he's managing people's money, right, these billionaires' money, I think we can know something's up, right? Like I think that's clear. And maybe it's not actionable right away, but I think that's the kind of thing that should be public domain. And again, if he sends you, a postcard for Christmas or something, I don't think that's very condemning and I wouldn't give a crap. Now, I realize some people would. And I know that the moment this comes out, right, and then they release these files and they're like, oh, see, Trump was an associate of Epstein. I'm like, well, we already knew that, right? Obviously, that's going to happen. It's already happening before they've even seen any lists. They're going to just say, that Trump is obviously an associate. But people have to remember that, like, again, this is Epstein. He was a very popular guy in the middle of the New York City life, and everybody knew him. Like everybody who's anybody basically knew this guy, right? So like you have to at least mitigate it with that understanding. You have to just put a little grain of salt in there and understand that just knowing Epstein is not a problem, but having financial dealings with him might be, especially if you're paying him abnormal sums for.
Yeah. And here's the threshold too. So it does seem cowardice if the only reason you're holding this back is for political things, right?
Right.
If they came out and said, look, Trump did nothing criminal. He was never right implicated. There's zero victims implicating him. There's, he wasn't on the island. He wasn't whatever type of things like this. But they were really good friends and they had a correspondence, right? And he realizes that's going to make his poll numbers drop.
Right.
And he's holding all of this up because he's afraid of that political cost. Tim's like, hey, look, yeah, everybody take the hit, man. I mean,
right.
Like put it beyond that. So I can understand. It's a little bit like a bomb that's gone off because we know this is conspiracy fact. It's not like we don't know, Joe. It's not verified that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were criminals. Right. And so anyway, I'm interested. We're getting a lot of comments. What are if anybody has something they'd like us to address? I know we've had over 500 people watching this tonight. You can give us a super chat, and we will hop on your question if you have a take you want us to address related to this. But how the government handles information, I don't think can be cavalier. I don't think they can go around character assassinating people when they say like, well, we don't have enough to convict you, but we can give all this information that makes you look bad.
Yeah. So again, I'm not calling for the government to proactively destroy people's lives, right? I'm just calling for the government not to conceal it. Right. There's a difference. One is passive, one is active. Right. So, but yeah, I am curious to hear what people have to say. Obviously we got so many people in here that it's difficult to even single somebody out. The chat's moving so fast, and God, by the way, guys, thank you so much for watching today, because this is the most we've ever had. So please, thank you so much. Please like share, and subscribe. Yeah, please tell your friends about us. I do want to kind of move toward this week's big announcements, this week's big conspiracy, which is the Obama administration being basically responsible for the entirety of Russiagate.
Created from creation, from whole cloth.
Wow, right? Like, which, by the way, this a little bit surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was Hillary. I truly thought that she. No, of course I didn't know. You know, I knew that somebody was behind
She
it.
was part of his administration.
Sure, and I knew that, you know, there's also right on the left, the left much more so than the right in general in politics does things by collaborative effort. The right kind of has like these personalities that people will move behind. For example, Donald Trump, and the left kind of sort of has this cabal, this like massive engine, this machine, and the person who's in front, like Kamala Harris or Biden, isn't really the person that's making the decisions. It's the cabal that does it. Right. So anytime there's something like this that happens, it's like it could be any number of people in that engine. Right. So, and I figured it would be the engine. But meanwhile, like the fact that this is like cold hard, Obama literally gave the order to, despite the fact that the intelligence reports. So that for those of you who are just finding out about this, the CIA basically gave Obama an intelligence report saying, no, Russia really wasn't that involved in our campaign, in the election, and what little they did had almost no effect, and it definitely wasn't like anything where there was a conspiracy or anything like that. Not to mention the fact that the Mueller report said the same thing. Not to mention the fact that, like, on and on and on, Obama was like, no, you go look for more stuff and draft new reports to find stuff to put on Donald Trump, and that is like treason, in my opinion. That's like a direct subversion of. People talk about insurrection and they talk about January 6th and all those like disorganized idiots on that day, and I'm like, no, this was a very organized campaign to subvert the democratic process directly.
Yeah, well, I mean, right. So opposition research is a very important part of any political campaign now. Whenever you're running against somebody, you need to dig up all the dirt on them. But creating dirt that doesn't exist, especially like this, like, oh, we have these essentially treasonable acts, but Donald Trump's never charged with treason, so we're just going to slander his name by getting this story out there, kind of leaked. You know, yeah. quasi, like leaking things is a way that they can do, to try to character assassinate. So there was deliberate sort of conspiracy to get fake opposition research out there, treat it like they were classified so that the press would take it super seriously, and so that they, you know, in a way that would weaken somebody that they saw as a threat. Now, it didn't work.
No.
But right, what's famously said of Richard Nixon: you're not paranoid if they actually are out to get you.
Right. And, I mean, this set the tone for the whole thing, because I mean, Donald Trump has had to deal with like nonsense after nonsense after nonsense, and impeachment and Russiagate and scandal, and then this basically repeats itself when there's like this concerted effort to like suppress the Hunter Biden laptop in the next election, and it's like constant. I don't understand. This should let everybody know, again, when it comes to conspiracy theories, right? Like, this was already conspiracy fact, right? We already knew that somebody had set Donald Trump up to create this Russiagate concept, right? We just didn't know who it was. We just didn't have the paper trail to really tie it in, but it was already, despite the primary narrative, the alternative theory was already more credible, right? It already made more sense that he was being set up and that there was no actual connection between him and Russia. Right,
common sense.
And now, of course, we actually have a paper trail that proves it. And now, what's unfortunate though is like, what's that phrase? Is like a lie can circulate the world 3 times in the amount of time that it takes to hear the truth. Unfortunately, people are going to hear the original message, the original primary narrative, which was Donald Trump and Russia are cheating. And there are still people to this day, especially in the left-wing media, who didn't even get this information this week. By the way, it's like not there. If you go to Ground News and like check to see who's reporting on this, MSNBC didn't mention a word. CNN barely broached it. You know, NPR didn't touch it. The New York Times didn't touch it. You know, like on and on and on. It is like vacant on the left. So if you're on the left,
it's going to be on like the 4th page,
Right.
you know,
If at all.
of Home and Garden on
Right.
on Friday when nobody read it in some small paragraph. It's like, oh, by the way, Obama was responsible for all of the Russiagate charges on Trump.
Yeah,
Trump was trying,
and that's
and let's
like
move on,
another,
and
like good news for
you
Ed
know,
Glover, just move it right. All you do, you just like it's like you change the screen you look at, and the story changes in the news. But anyway, so yeah, so now we have the paper trails, and obviously it's basically all fact. There's no more conspiracy theory to this, but people are still. I bet you there's like at least 20-30% of America probably still thinks that Trump and Russia were cheating together, and I'm like. That's a marvel to me that unfortunately we've become so docile and so compliant to the media and don't do our own due diligence anymore. That's a true shame.
it's
So
why media narratives. It's why spin in the media is so prevalent, because it works on people that don't come to our channel for common sense, right?
right,
People are willing to just accept narratives or things that they hear secondhand, or sort of a general narrative that there's like, oh yeah, well, Russia helped out Trump, and it takes so much then more evidence to overcome that first initial. If they can get the narrative to get people to have that first assumption, oh yeah,
so
Trump was doing this.
real quick, I want to address Paul. She's very very vocal about this. Paul, just so you understand, that just go to the Guardian. The Guardian this week was where the primary article was printed. Tulsi Gabbard brought these documents forth. The Fox News, who you probably don't watch. What?
Christy Noem? Christy Noem?
Well, Christy Noem dropped the files. Tulsi Gabbard about the accusation, right? So yeah, but Fox News got a hold of like actual digital meeting recordings from Obama and the transcripts. You can go find it. It's all it's all paper trailed. It's all. So if you watch Fox News, you should know that they have that meeting. They literally have the order from Obama on paper trail ordering people to go continue looking for things to manufacture to put on Trump with regard to Russiagate. You should be able to find it. It's very easy. So if you haven't found the paper trail, you probably just haven't gotten to it yet. But go find it. It's on there. I guarantee you. Yeah. And this is just one of many scandals over the last year between like the auto pen and between like covering up Biden's health and between like on and on and on. This just goes on forever. And I would think that after a certain critical mass of like garbage that we get from the media, we would start saying, okay, it's time to do something about it. And for those of you guys out there, understand that this is my process is I look at everything that the left says. I look at everything that the right says. I look at several independents, and then I start fact checking. After I've only used those to get like an idea of what I should start researching, right? And then I start fact checking, and I start like looking at the studies. I start looking at the paper trail itself, the actual documents from the court, the law itself, whatever I'm looking at the time. If you're not doing that, you're not getting a clear picture. And understand, it's okay not to get a full picture, right? Not everybody can be like a full-time, like we're not full-time like podcasters, political pundits yet, but we hope to be someday. But not everybody has the kind of time that I probably put like 40-50 hours of my week into this every week just to get like a basic understanding of some of these things. So if you're not doing that, understand that you're just not getting the full picture. Do not take like MSNBC's word for it. Don't take Fox News's word for it.
No, I think there has been some incremental change in the mainstream media, and we'll see some changes. It's not going to be rapid. But one of the big things, like 60 Minutes paying Trump for, right, which was humiliating to the very far leftist group there in CBS News. That they had to accept that they'd gone too far and were putting their thumb on the scales. They weren't being and they were losing credibility because of it. Right. Jeff Bezos is trying to move the Washington Post to a point where at least some conservative voices are printed there. Right. The LA Times is trying to do that. So we need to see some. CNN is trying to get news directors where they're trying to get rid of the most whack job, like indefensible liberals, unless they get good ratings, of course. But
yeah, of course.
but giving Scott Jennings a chance to expose and how ridiculous this is, and give people a chance at the beginning to see that the narratives are not just one way. There is a different way to approach the issues.
Yeah.
So, and even Fox News and everybody is going through a period of sort of the news directors need to reevaluate. And they need to stop carrying weight for the Democrat Party, for the left, right? They refuse to, and they just instinctively want to spin anything that's negative for the left away, right? And try to, that's what the whole Let's Go Brandon, right, was indicative of. Let's Go Brandon, right? It was at a NASCAR race. The people were chanting F word Joe Biden.
Right.
And without being told anything, a journalist who's there is reporting, talking to somebody, just says, "Hey, they're saying let's go, Brandon. How do you feel about that?" Right? She doesn't feel, it's totally bogus reporting, but she does it so instinctively. I doubt that she even had to have anything put in her ear and told her to do that. Just in general is, hey, and so when people would chant "Let's go, Brandon," yes, it was also a way to cleanly say that they were opposing or protesting Joe Biden, but it was also calling out the media for, like, we don't believe you. You are carrying water. You are trying to hide the flaws, the very real flaws that the left has, and we see through it. We're not deceived by it anymore.
So yeah, great. Follow Me Now says, when have politicians ever told the truth? Now a con artist cosplaying as a politician. Yeah, that's probably accurate. An accurate statement about literally every single politician that we've got in office. I have to agree with you there. I can't say that's wrong. I mean, you're right. It's just unfortunate that politicians are deny until you're caught, and then like mitigate, and then and the media plays, just carries water for everybody. That's a shame. It used to be that the media was out to like find the scandals, like to try to unveil the truth, to like reveal information, even if it was like dirty laundry, because that was better news, right? It was made people like want to watch. But now it's like the media is just like, let me just try to like treat my own side like let's be nice to them so that they keep watching, and that's like the game. And it's a shame that it's turned into that.
Well, Dan Rather, right? For those who don't know, Dan Rather pushed the envelope. He thought he had so much.
What? You get it? I'd rather have him.
Yeah, yes.
I'm kidding.
He thought he could push it, that he had so much credibility and trust that he could report on slander story against GOP presidential candidate Bush that were completely fake. And it took not just conspiracy theories, but conspiracy journalists to look into it and expose him for it. And he was banished like that off television and banished. His credibility went nothing. And that's what I'd like to see too, when people who have been spinning so obviously for the left just be saying, look, nobody's ever going to trust any reporting you do on any issue.
Right.
So, if you want to create your own podcast on YouTube, go ahead. But we're not putting you out there on the mainstream.
Right. So, one thing I was going to do is ask other people if there are any like conspiracy theories that they wanted us to briefly touch on. I know there's a lot out there, and again, some conspiracy theories are more and less credible, right? Like obviously there's going to be a prevailing narrative. Like the prevailing narrative, for example, is that we landed on the moon. I happen to agree with that one. I think that we did land on the moon. I think that the alternative theories in that conspiracy theory are just not very plausible, right? But by the same token, there are plenty of theories where the prevailing narrative doesn't make sense. And there's times where the prevailing narrative can't be the case. All right, Grant says, thank you so much, Grant. Grant says Trump rated, I think he meant a different word, but he's covered.
No, I think he was a judge, right?
At the beauty pageant. Right. Yeah, he was. Yeah. And everybody was worried about that, I guess, about him being a beauty pageant guy. I didn't think anything negative about it, but I mean, of course, anytime.
Now when we look at it, it's unseemly. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
adults shouldn't be publicly commenting on the attractiveness of underage girls.
Right. Well, that's fair. And then, like,
is it criminal? But yeah.
So here's my question though. Because I don't know anything about the beauty pageant world. Like, I'm thoroughly ignorant about this. But what would be the appropriate way to do it? Like, how do you just not have adults manage it? Somebody has to manage the beauty pageant, right? And then somebody has to judge it. So at some point you have to say this woman is more attractive than that woman, even though she's 13. Right? I don't know. I don't know the rules because I've never really
That's
looked
true.
at it.
I mean, usually there's talents and there's other stuff that they're supposed to, there's scholarship competitions. So it's supposed to be more than just like a sort of a tawdry. This person is hotter than all these persons.
Right.
This
Fair.
person's a pageant winner, shows greater intelligence, is better public speaker, yada yada.
But I mean,
So as far as that goes, like if he was a judge in pageants are sort of legitimate things that have women have interest in. Nobody's forcing them to do that they're volunteered to do. But it is, when we look back on it now, it is inappropriate for adult men to comment on and rate.
Grant, thanks so much again. Yeah, he walked in there in the locker rooms all the net. So that part I've heard. I don't know that that's confirmed, but is it? I don't know.
That would not be acceptable. That is definitely inappropriate. We should not. Right. We're not here to cover or to say everything he did wrong. That was wrong. If he did that, that was a violation. Men should not do that or feel like that it's okay to do that.
And so right. And obviously, like there would be a difference between saying, oh, this is a gorgeous young lady, and instead of saying like, wow, she's hot, right? If they're like underage, obviously one is probably appropriate, the other one probably isn't. Probably we should just have, women manage the pageants too, but I don't know. Maybe that's not better this day and age. I don't know. But
I think
anyway.
one of the other conspiracy theories I have is people are very suspicious about these LA fires. If you've seen that, and feel like the fires are happening, that they're not seeing the homes are burning, but the houses are not. Right, the Lahaina fire as well, the Hawaii Maui fire, that the fire hydrants are turned off. Right, that.
Okay.
Even one person who stuck around with the hose was able to put out fires, but they evacuate everything and allow these whole neighborhoods to burn. People are very concerned and think about that there's conspiracies for why they want to do that. Oh, okay. Follow me now.
Follow me now says when our shelf pantries are empty because our farmers don't have workforce to pick our crop, our economy will tank. I think that the worry that we will no longer have farming in America is probably overblown, right? I'm just going to say that I'm not saying that they won't face labor shortages here and there. But the truth is, like, we have to ask ourselves what we really want out of America. Like, do we want farmers? Whoa, somebody just blew me up on the phone. Do we want farmers that are hiring, labor so that they can hire them for like $3 an hour and work them 12-hour days because the competition does? I mean, is that what we want? Or do we want people paid per the labor standards of America? Do we want, that's just my thoughts on it.
Obviously, we don't want crops to rot in the thing,
right.
And we want a working temporary worker program where somebody can come to the gate at customs and say, "I'm here to work as a temporary worker, as a farm worker for this season, for harvest season." What we don't want is somebody saying, "Oh, I'm going to work as a farmer." And cross the border illegally because we're suspicious. Oh, are you actually drug muling in drugs or other things and then working there as a cover? Right? Come here legitimately. Right? We don't need illegal labor. And that's what, give us this year, give us 2 years where we have a cut down on, where we have no illegal immigration. And let's see what the adjustments are. And I think one of the adjustments should be to allow more temporary workers for farm labor, right? The more people can come and say, I want to work on a farm, have a way. We've got the internet now, so farm workers south of the border or other countries can say, hey, these farms are hiring people, can apply for that, get hired, go to customs and say, I have a job to go to this farm and hire something. This is within our realm to do technologically and for our country to do. So let our food supply, let capitalism solve this, but we should first stop illegal crossings. We do not need illegal crossings to pick our food. It's not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Grant is still going on about Trump and about Trump walking in on beauty pageants. Now, here's one thing I'll say, Grant. One thing. This is an interesting. What's the right word? There's an interesting like pattern, right? From on the right and the left, right? On the right, we tend to worry about policy. We tend to worry about what someone's actions in office are going to be. On the left, they tend to worry more about reputation and character, right? And that's just a pattern. And that isn't to say that we on the right don't care about reputation and character. It isn't to say that the left doesn't care about policy, but it's just the way we often prioritize things, right? So Trump, I don't think that Trump is a very good person, right? I don't. And to be fair, I'm not even really a Trump fan, but I acknowledge that he has had several policies that are successful, right? And between the two, if I had to pick, right, obviously in the best case scenario, I'd have someone with a great reputation, great character, and great policies if I could pick. But the problem was our choices this last election weren't between somebody with great policies and bad character and someone with great character and bad policies. Our choices were between someone with decent policies and bad character and someone with bad character and bad policies. That's how I feel it, right? So, like, unfortunately, Trump was just the obvious choice. Not saying he was a great choice. I'm just saying that he was significantly better than Kamala Harris as a ghost in front of this mysterious cabal who I never get to meet.
Well, and the GOP has just shown that they're more responsible in governing than the Democratic Party, and more willing to take on waste. And Trump, for all of his policies, and the resistance have he's largely been winning in court, and found to be legal. And so, we're trying to attribute that. Yes, we're capable of separating Trump the man who made flaws. We're not here to excuse any of the activities at beauty pageants as 100% appropriate. We don't know as fact all the facts on that, but if he was
Definitely
if that's what he was doing, then we would say don't do that anymore. Stop doing that. That's not appropriate, and nobody should follow his example on that. That's common sense, people. Maybe he got away with that because he was an elite. He was a celebrity. Celebrities get treated differently, but we would encourage everyone to learn from that. Don't do it; it will come back to bite you. Right? No, at some point, what you do in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. So that's why I think ultimately the Epstein files and all this will come out. I think that which is hidden will come out. People will be exposed. It's not going to be maybe in the way that we hoped or envisioned it would be when he was first arrested or when he was first killed, when he first died. But it's going to come out, and things that are hidden will not be hidden forever.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I do think that there probably will be elements that will remain hidden, unfortunately. But I do think that you're right. I think most of it will come out, and thankfully, we can shine some light on a lot of these things as the JFK files just came out, the MLK files just came out. Hopefully, we can get to the bottom of all of that. But guys, that's it for us for the hour. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is our biggest live session ever. We do this every Wednesday and every Saturday. So if you enjoyed what you saw today, please come back. We'll be back rocking and rolling on Wednesday. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time on Common Mansplaining.
Hey, keep it common.
Keep it common.